Welcome to the LivXplore Podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Sean Payne, owner and founder of LivXplore Real Estate and Lifestyle. And today I have with me Isaiah Chass, our founding agent, and Paul Fordham from Homeward Bound out of Marin County. Thank you guys for joining us today.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us, Paul.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so Paul, tell us a little bit about your organization.
Well, I'm the co-CEO of Homeward Bound of Marin. We've been around since 1974. I've been with the agency for 18 years. And really the purpose is to end homelessness in Marin through housing solutions. Okay. And so we operate 5 shelters. We also have 13 housing developments or supportive housing programs that we've either built or operate.
Did you say 4 housing?
13 housing sites.
Sites, wow.
Yeah.
What's your overall capacity? How many people can you?
About 600 people.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
And we're just in Marin County, and we work with homeless families, homeless adults, veterans, seniors, basically with the generalist for folks who experience homelessness. And we want to have the shelter as like a place to be where we find pathway to housing. And then we have some of our own housing that people will live in. There's 13 programs, but it's not enough for everyone we serve. So we also help people get back to work, sign up for other affordable housing wait lists, get job skills, all kinds of things like that.
Very cool.
And are they 2 separate programs, one with the workforce housing, one with the veteran housing?
So we have the way that our response to homelessness has been sort of co-created with our team is that we want to have different avenues out of homelessness. So some of them are really based on people returning to work. They have a life crisis, maybe a relationship breaks up, or they struggle with addiction, but then they get clean and sober, or financial crisis. And for some of those people in that situation, they're able to rebuild their life. Homelessness was something that happened briefly, and they need a little support, maybe even for a couple of years, an affordable place to be. And then they're able to move on, return to work, even move into home ownership, but certainly to the regular rental market. And there's another section of the people experiencing homelessness who then really need ongoing supportive services and supportive housing for the long term. And that could be because of their age or disabilities, or it could be the number of barriers they have.
Sure.
So our response has been like the shelter is somewhere to catch everybody.
Right.
And then from there, we work with folks to find the right pathway out. And so we've developed both short-term housing where people can be for 2 or 3 years while they're building job skills, building their rental history again. Because if you think you've been homeless for a few years, even you don't have any credit history usually, or it's really bad credit. You have rental or employment history. So it's really hard to suddenly get back into the housing market, rent a place. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to know, who are you? Where have you been?
Right.
So some of our programs are really built for folks to pay rent, and it's affordable rent, but they pay it for a short period of time and build their credit, build their rental history, build their rental resume, get better job skills, and then they can just springboard back into the marketplace.
Do you have where do the majority of your where do the majority of your clients come from? And is there 1 or 2 aspects that you can kind of identify as a result of why they're facing what they are that way?
Yeah, great question. So in terms of where do people come from, we're really Homeward Bound. We're only in Marin County. We have shelters across a couple of the major cities, so in San Rafael and Nevada. But we really serve anybody in Marin, or anybody who finds himself homeless in Marin. So that's where people come from. Folks experiencing homelessness usually find us because we're the main sheltering program. So shelter being a place to be, a place you can be for the night, but it's not, you have no right to be there in the long term. You don't have a lease or anything. Mm-hmm. So people find us as a part of the safety net. Some people might find us on their first night of homelessness. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Or it could be that somebody's been living outside or in an encampment or under the freeway, and they say, I can't do this anymore. I just need to be inside. I need to make a change. And then often they might get referred to us through a street outreach team or police department. Someone hospital refers into us sometimes. So that's how people find us. And then in terms of figuring out what somebody needs, every single person has a different story of why they became homeless. And so it's working with them to learn what are their specific barriers? Whatever led to their homelessness isn't going to help them get out of it. So how can we help them find a different pathway and meeting them where they are? And then also finding out what they're eligible for. So if somebody's a veteran, they have serious mental health issues and they're a senior, there's a bunch of different options we can look at. We can work with the Veterans Department. We run some veterans programs. If they're a senior, they can sign up for a bunch of senior affordable housing wait lists. They have severe mental health issues. There's different pathways through that system. If somebody has none of those issues, we have to then dig a little deeper and start figuring out, are there pathways back to employment? Is there family they can connect with? Can we help them increase their income, or just regular affordable housing? Can we connect them with that? That increasing income pathway is probably 30 or 40% of folks we work with.
Really?
A lot of people do need subsidies and affordable housing, but there are some that don't. So it's meeting people where they are and also finding what's their interest. At Homeward Bound, we run a big culinary training program, which I can get into in a minute if you're interested. But that's not for everybody. It really works for some folks, but not everybody wants to be in the kitchen being a cook. So then, can we help? We've had some success helping people get connected with the trades, so they can get a union plumbing job or even just working on a construction crew. But if you get it with the union, you can get pretty good wages.
Right.
So like connecting people that way, if that's an interest and if they have the physical ability to do that. So yeah, it's just meeting people where they are.
Figuring it out.
Yeah.
Tell us more about the culinary program.
Okay. So we've been running a culinary training program since 2001. Really, we opened a shelter. We wanted to serve 3 meals a day in a canteen style in the shelter, and we were trying to figure out food service because we're the experts for shelter and housing, but we didn't really know a lot about food service at the time. As we were interviewing different food service purveyors, we realized there's a bunch of people on the other side of the canteen line looking for employment. Hold on, maybe we could make this a culinary training program that could work with the folks who are trying to return to work and rebuild their lives. So we tried it with a few folks. It was really successful, not just in terms of people wanting to get a job in this field, but also we found that as we follow people over the long term, they really had built a career. Like, okay, this is my identity now. I'm a cook. And they might start the lowest wage cook, but 5 years later, they're still in the restaurant industry and now they've got much better wages. Mm-hmm. So we saw the potential of that. We'd also seen a lot of people who had not done well in school for various reasons. Maybe their parents were homeless and they moved around a lot, changed schools, didn't succeed in schools. So people doing a culinary training program, they could do it. Our program's 10 weeks long. Within 10 weeks, they could complete it. And a lot of people said to us, this is the first time I've completed something. And that self-esteem goes up, right. And it's not based on like book work necessarily. There's some hygiene tests and things like that, but there's not, it's how fast can you chop carrots, right. And it's kind of, like maybe it appeals to different people. You got a knife and a uniform and now here I am successful. And so it becomes an identity and a career rather than just a job. So we now have, that's morphed over those since 2001. Now it's industry certified. It's a American Culinary Federation certified training. So somebody says, I'm a master chef. Right. That's an American Culinary Federation certification. And we're not training people to be master chefs right away, but it's still the same industry certification people get in our training. And they're becoming more of a prep cook or line cook. And then we have 5 businesses that then we can employ people into. So folks do a 10-week training, 5 days a week, 9 to 3, kind of like a job, and they pass all these rubrics and tests. At the end of that, they graduate, and some folks go straight into jobs in the restaurant industry locally.
Right.
Had somebody in Petaluma at Central Market employed one of our grads, and they did really well.
That's awesome.
But also others are not quite ready yet. They might have more barriers, and that could be everything from like, okay, they've got all the techniques, but they're really slow. Uh-huh. So you go into a fast-paced kitchen, you're not going to succeed. Right. So then they can come work for us for 6 months. We'll pay them. They will work on whatever that deficit is, or the skill area. And then we run these businesses. We have a event center and catering business in Novato. We have a celebrity chef monthly series where we get all these great celebrity chefs come in and do cooking demos. We have John Ash coming in.
Really?
Next month.
That's,
sold out in December.
Cool.
Bunch of different chefs. Actually, we have the chef from Table Culture Provisions in Petaluma coming in February.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we have these chef demos. So that's another business we have. We have a line of high-end dog treats that are in 120 stores, like all the Whole Foods and Pet Food Express.
Really?
Called
and are they all
Wagster
made
Treats.
at your facilities?
Yeah. And then the people who make them were formerly homeless. Maybe they're in supportive housing now. Or maybe they're still in the shelter working their way out. And so then what we can do is they can work on the dog treat business. But then if we have a catering, the event center, they work on that. So people get a diverse set of skills, and then they help us flex between the businesses. And then we also make meals for our own programs. That's another of our businesses too. So we're doing 10,000 meals a month for different supportive housing and shelter programs. And again, the revenue from those programs then helps to pay to employ these folks.
Wow.
So we have the culinary program. There's a bunch of different outcomes. Not everybody works for us. Some people go straight to the industry, but those who need it can work for us. And then we're able to earn some more income to pays for the cost of the training program.
That's a really cool program. You said since 2001, you guys?
2001, we started it.
So almost over 20 years this has been going.
Yeah.
Have other people copied this model that way? I mean, it seems like
great
almost
question.
a no-brainer that way.
Yeah. So great question. So there was about 5 or 6 of us that started around the same time nationally, just not connected, but found this as a really good pathway. And if you think about it, somebody who's either returning citizen, like coming out of the prison system or moving out of homelessness, a lot of restaurants just want people who work. They don't care what your past was. Will you show up today? Because my chef just quit and I got meals to get on the table. So that industry, the cooking industry. My
family owned a local restaurant here in town, so I grew up in one. So I totally know what you're talking about.
You're the dishwasher today, but the other guy didn't show up, so now suddenly you're the prep cook, right?
Yep.
So that industry is a great fit. So a bunch of different nonprofits who are working around, trying to create training or pathways back from difficult situations. We all kind of realized food service was a great training ground,
right?
And so that we've 7 or 8 years ago, there's a collective of folks formed this group called Catalyst Kitchens, and so there's a great nonprofit in DC called DC Central Kitchens, another one in Seattle called Fair Start,
really
great one in Florida. So we all kind of came together because other people were seeing our programs and saying, hey, can you show us how to do that? Can we learn from that? We want to replicate that in our community. And now we're about 80 strong, different nonprofits, all with training kitchens all around the country. And then we share ideas. So it's not, the burden isn't on, say, Homeward Bound of Marin or Fair Start to teach everybody how to do everything. Instead, it's more like a shared knowledge pool.
Right.
And then we learn from each other.
Right.
Recently we've had trouble recruiting for people for the culinary program because we actually bring people in from the community as well as from our shelters to train for food service. It's like most businesses in the world right now, it's hard to get staff, and we were struggling to recruit people for our program. And then you can talk to these other kitchens and everyone's like, oh yeah, there's not as many people, but if they were gone, what's going on? And so people comparing notes about, okay, so is there still a need for our service? Yes, there is. So how do we market it differently? Or how do we, even for people who were offering a free training to enter the food service industry, we're finding now we have to put a marketing spin on it because they're thinking, well, why could I do that? I could walk into, McDonald's and get a dishwashing job. Mm-hmm. Why do I want to take your training? And when we explain, well, we're setting you up for a career and food hygiene training and you learn all the culinary techniques. So we're having to figure out that. So having this network of other kitchens so we can just talk to is it's really interesting and helpful.
That's great. What a really cool program. What a really cool program.
I think that's a good segue into, you have a new development project that, if I'm not mistaken, is currently approved to start construction, which includes a culinary site to expand on this.
Yes, exactly. Great segue into that, actually. So this is in the former Hamilton base in Novato.
Sure. Okay.
So we have actually 2 plots there we've developed, including the one where we started the culinary training program.
Oh, is that where it's out of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we have an event space there too. And then we have we also have a shelter and supportive housing. They exist right now. But there's another parcel on that site, which has been designated for nonprofit use. It's a terrible name. It's called the HUD parcel, which is like the city's name. We haven't renamed it yet, but it's 2.8 acres.
Is that the portion behind the gym over there?
It's before you go down into the base.
Okay.
It's actually and it was part of the base. It was the commissary where they received the goods, but it's not kind of in the valley where the base is.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, it's more near the airport or up there in that Safeway shopping center.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we have 2.8 acres. We're going to build 3 separate distinct buildings on there. Cost of about $30 billion. And so one of them is, as you said, expansion of these programs. So it's a manufacturing bakery, with a little hands-on training kitchen and a little event space there. And that's really to build out the successful businesses we already have. Like the dog treat business is going so well. Did about $120,000 in revenue last year.
Really?
But it's in a tiny corner of our commercial kitchen where we're making meals for our programs, right? So we want to have a dedicated space so we can go, what's it look like if we go times 10? And what type of jobs could we do if we're doing over $1 million a year?
Are you just like selling those locally in Marin County right now? Or what's your...
No, we're mainly in California.
Okay.
We have a few outside of California. So we're in all 33 Bay Area Whole Foods.
Uh-huh.
We're in all 60 like branches of Pet Food Express. But again, that's all around California, including Petaluma. And then a bunch of independent markets. And then we have some chains, but chains are more like Oliver's Market or Molly Stone's, places like that.
Very cool.
So having the one development there, if we had a manufacturing bakery, we can really grow that and go all around the country.
Right.
And go expand and work with big distributors. But also we can, for us, it's not really about making money. We don't want to lose money, but it's about creating jobs. So if we could go to a manufacturing bakery, we can train people not just to make the treats, but to, work in a warehouse, like shipping and receiving and handling and inventory management and sales and marketing.
That's what I was going to ask. Are there options for other professions within that business, like marketing? And
so right now it's not big enough. So there are, but it's sort of our fundraising team, do a bit of marketing. But $120,000 a year is a great start. It's not just a tiny little business. It's getting to big volume, but it needs to get a lot bigger before we can really create dedicated training opportunities. But absolutely the goal is to have them as training opportunities where people come through the program and then move on to other local industries who have a need for that. And then we train the next person. Mm-hmm. And that's how we really measure success, is the number of people trained, number of people who move on from us. I mean, it is a strange business model where you're trying to lose your best employees all the time,
Right.
But that's the goal. That's how we measure success. And so, part of the business is like the manufacturing bakery that we're trying to build, and also a hands-on kitchen for more teaching, and then some breakout event spaces, because we have an event space called the Key Room. It's on that same campus, but we often find we're getting double booked or people want breakout rooms. So that's one component of what we're going to build. And then there's 2 housing programs on there. So we're going to build a veterans dedicated building for homeless veterans experiencing homelessness. Be 24 units of housing, would have 24/7 support services on site.
Wow.
And we believe that will help us actually end veteran homelessness in Marin County. We've been tracking it person by person, seeing that number drop. And each month we track like how many people move into housing who are veterans and how many new folks we find who either return to homelessness or they were in an encampment, we didn't know they're a veteran, now we know they are, so let's get them connected. And we think by the time we open these last 24 beds in about 18 months' time, that we'll be able to say we've reached 0 veterans in Marin experiencing homelessness, and then any new veterans that fall into homelessness will be prioritized for the next available bed. Yeah. So we're really excited about that. And there's a groundbreaking for it actually I don't know when this podcast goes out, but this coming Thursday, as the day before Veterans Day, we're having a groundbreaking ceremony. Have Senator McGuire coming to speak, and we'll have a color guard, and we'll have a fun event. You're welcome to join us, 1:30.
Cool. Thank you.
And then the last building, so the Veterans Building, manufacturing, bakery, and training space, we're also adding 26 units of housing for folks who are re-entering the workforce, who've been homeless. It's sort of workforce housing is a loose description, but that means so much to so many different people. People often think of teachers when you think of workforce housing, or firemen. For us, it's people who are entering the local workforce from the shelter system. So maybe they've got a job at Pete's and they're on a Pete's management training, or they're have people who have been working either in the jail system or the postal system, but the entry-level job doesn't, even though they're working 40 hours a week and it's a pathway to more money, it's really hard to rent anywhere because the rental market is so expensive. So this way we'll have supportive housing options for those folks where, again, they can rebuild their credit, they can work to save money, and then over time, as they get more and more income, they can move on to their own place.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very, very cool.
And then do you have programs that allow, once you go through your shelter programs, to help them get placed on their own? Do you reach out directly with landlords? Is there anything along those lines?
Yeah. Again, great question. So a variety of things. So we don't have enough housing for everybody experiencing homelessness or even the volume of people that come through the shelter. So each person, we're trying to identify what is the right pathway for them. And we do that together with the person. And we're realistic. Like, you're unlikely to get subsidized housing because the programs are available and you're not a veteran, you don't meet that qualification or whatever that circumstance is. So yes, we try and work with each person to figure out a pathway and then help them find that housing. We also work closely with the Marin Housing Authority, and they have housing locators. So if you were to get a voucher, like a Section 8 voucher, a subsidized housing voucher, they have housing locators that will help you find housing, connect with landlords. You can find housing on your own, but they also have a network of folks they work with. They also know how to sell that program and explain to the landlords why it's beneficial often to take a Section 8 voucher, partly because you're guaranteed income.
Right.
If you rent somebody off the street, what if they decide to stop paying, and then it can be hard to get just that random person out of your unit. Whereas if you've got the housing authority involved, you have guaranteed payments. So that's they have a whole arm that talks to landlords about, here's the benefits.
Right.
Section 8 gets a bad rap, but honestly,
it does. Yes.
But honestly, here's what they have. And I assume it's the same as Sonoma, I don't know, but it can be like in Marin, they have a big landlord mitigation pool. So if your unit's damaged, they'll pay for repairs. If somebody stops paying, you're still guaranteed to get the money from Section 8. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of pluses that they have, and that's the housing locators. So that's their job. So that's not actually Homeward Bound people, but we connect folks through the shelter to those people when applicable. We also help people a lot, be realistic about their housing search. Sometimes folks, we have to say, have you thought about moving out of county because it's cheaper, or moving back to the state where you might have been from originally? Mm-hmm. And most people we found who experience homelessness in Marin, they're from Marin. They're really like 75 to 80% of folks, they're either from Marin or they were housed in Marin. But it may have been that they were housed in Marin in a relationship. Their relationship broke up.
I see.
They may have lost a job or whatever, and the relationship broke up. And then suddenly they're like, okay, yes, you were homeless in Marin. You were here for 6 years. But before that, the rest of your family is back in Iowa, let's say. Do you want to explore going back there where the rent's a lot cheaper, or your job at wherever it is, Target, they have Targets there too, you know, and the money would go a lot further.
Yeah, sure.
So we have those conversations. And we actually find we have those conversations initially, people are like, no, I love it here. It's beautiful, which it is. Then after 8 months of sleeping in a dorm with 3 other people snoring every night, and sharing bathrooms and all that stuff, they're maybe more open to that conversation. So sometimes what we work on is rebuilding those maybe broken relationships in the past. Maybe somebody had an addiction and that they've been clean for 4 years, but they blew up all those relationships and the family has not rebuilt them. So sometimes we work with folks around that when we're in the shelter. Like, let's write letters, explain where you are, see if you can get on a Zoom call with your family or reconnect via Facebook. And we've seen that happen. Right. We had a guy who worked with us as a dishwasher for about 1.5 years, saved all his money, and then moved back to Tennessee. And he got a job managing a mobile home community, which came with housing. And then he brought a bunch of money he'd saved, and he had family and friends back there. Oh, and again, he was initially resistant, but he was just saving. He knew he'd have to have a lot of money to stay in Marin. And then eventually he's like, oh, this would go so much further elsewhere. So I'm not saying we should be outsourcing the problem. It's more like, where do you have other options? Right. And maybe somebody doesn't have other options. A lot of folks we see have grown up in Marin or in the North Bay, and they have a community of people that they're connected to, and they stay connected. That's it. They've not. We have people actually who've grown up maybe in Marin City who've never been to the ocean, and they're adults now. It's like, oh my gosh, you're so close. People come from all over the world to go here, but their community was very small. Maybe generational poverty, and they've not seen all that. So then, but their network is here. The idea of going to San Francisco or moving to Lake County is terrifying. Let alone saying move out of county, and then they don't know anybody. So that's not the solution for them, as opposed to the guy in Tennessee who had all his family there, or the person in Iowa. So we just spent a lot of time exploring different options with people, and then also continuing to have those conversations 6 or 9 months later, because in our shelter, you can stay for 28 days. It's essentially night to night. If your behavior's off, we ask you to leave. But when somebody comes into the shelter, we'll say, look, we know that you can't be planning each day, where am I going to sleep tonight? So as soon as your behavior's okay, you can stay for 28 days. Mm-hmm. And we'll work on a housing pathway. And if at the end of those 28 days, we haven't figured anything out, but your behavior's great and you're working on your housing plan, we're working together on it, and you're meeting with us, we'll extend for another 28 days. And then people can keep extending as long as they need to, assuming they're following the guidelines. But that 28 days means they don't get residency. They're staying in a shelter situation, but we're continuing that momentum towards housing. And the conversation you might have in the first month, you might repeat it again in 8 months later, and there's a different answer because somebody's getting more and more frustrated. Like, I just want to get my own place. I'm fed up. Mm-hmm. I had roommates. The idea of living with roommates, let alone sleeping in a room with others, it's really hard. Right. I would hate to do that right now.
Right, yeah.
And so it's better than sleeping under a bridge, but it's an interim situation for folks. So
sure,
it's like, let's keep moving forward. Let's find you your pathway home.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
So to wrap up, I guess, what's the timeline on the 3-part project that you're previously speaking about?
Great. Yeah. So we're doing it in 2 phases. We've raised enough money for basically to knock down the existing buildings, do the site work and infrastructure for all 3. But we build the veterans building in total. We've raised money for that. And then we build up to our pad level right now for the other 2 buildings. And then we'll continue to fundraise. So we think it's about a $30 million total project. And we've raised about $13.5 million so far, which is enough for the site work in the veterans building. Uh-huh. And then we'll keep fundraising. And if everything aligns, we'll just keep building. If it doesn't, we'll pause at the end of phase 1, raise the balance, and then go back to finishing those 2 other buildings.
I'm sorry. What's your major source of funding?
So is
it grants or?
It's a big mix of grants, individual donations, foundations. For this one in particular, there's been a lot of government funding, particularly for the veterans component. Okay. The government's had a real initiative to direct funds, and when I say the government, I mean both the state, the feds, and local too, to end veteran homelessness. So we've got Senator McGuire helped us get $4 million from the California budget surplus a couple of years ago, and also helped us secure some veterans funding through the state. So that total was $7 million of the 13. That we've raised already. Okay. Marin Community Foundation's been very supportive. We got about $2.2 million from them. And then various different, the city of Nevada put in some money. They have in lieu fees when people build regular housing, and you're supposed to build, I think, 20% affordable housing. But the builder can choose to put into this in lieu fund instead, in lieu of building the housing. I see. Okay. And then the money gets directed to projects like ours. I see. So so we've got some money from the city of Nevada from that. And then a bunch of very generous individuals, have supported us.
Sure. That's great. Aside from funding, have you experienced, what roadblocks have you experienced within the community? And if now's your chance to kind of, explain why they're wrong.
Well, actually, I will say for this development we've been talking about, which is the Veterans and Workforce Housing and the Training Center, we've had very little pushback. In fact, we've had pretty much nothing but support for that from the neighbors, from the city, from everybody around. Part of that, I think, is this is the 3rd development we've done on that little campus. And the first one, when we opened a shelter there was a lot of pushback from the community. Sure. And then the second one, when we opened supportive housing and a training center, there was a little bit, but not very much pushback, because we'd already proven the track record, and we could say, here's the police chief came out in support and said, this is not creating problems. We're not really getting calls for service here. Mm-hmm. We're getting calls for service elsewhere, and we're bringing people here, Right. It's part of the solution. So the community has really been very supportive.
They saw the results. Yeah, that's great.
We have opened, I will say that we've opened 2 other programs this year. We converted a motel in Corte Madera, right next to Marin Joe's. Mm-hmm. We converted that into 18 little studio units, and the community was very hesitant at first. Mm-hmm. They were very afraid, partly because the funding allowed everyone to skip the community process, so there was sort of no weigh-in from the community, which I understand. Somebody just said, you're going to open a program down the street from you and you have no say in it.
Right.
I understand that concern, but there was definitely a lot of fear about who might go into the program and what it might then lead to in the community. So part of my job has been to meet with folks like that and be part of a community discussion board so that I can talk about, well, people who are in these housing programs, they have to sign a lease, same as the rest of us. So if you think, people were claiming, people make outrageous claims online about, are you going to be importing drug dealers from the South Bay, or East Bay or wherever they think it is? And so, no, actually, no, right? If there's illegal activity, police will be called. We're more likely to spot it because we've got staffing on site and cameras and all the other things. So we're creating like a safe community, and people don't follow the terms of the lease. They have to leave, and they're paying to be there too. And if you get kicked out of a homeless program, there's nowhere for you to go. So there's like a lot of like education around that.
Sure.
As opposed to what was there before, which was a motel that was more of the lower end motel, and the community clients who were in there may have been doing a lot more illegal things than our folks are we doing, with no support on it. And then they're also gone tomorrow. So there's no accountability, right? So, so I think having those conversations is helpful. And I think when people are afraid of homeless programs or affordable housing, I think what they're afraid of is safety. That's the root of their concern.
Sure.
And I think part of what I feel my job is to do is to communicate to them that I hear them, and the reason we're building and operating these programs is to create safety. It's far safer for all of us to have people in a program than outside on the street, and sleeping outside. And if they are using drugs and alcohol, there's nobody checking that, and there's stuff everywhere, and then there's more police calls for service, so it takes longer for the police or the ambulance to get to your house, and it's also safer for the people involved to have a place where they belong and can be inside. So it's creating safety for everybody. I think there's a whole bunch of I know there's a whole bunch of studies that prove that once you get somebody who's been sleeping outside under a bridge into supportive housing, that everything in their life improves. So if they're not just worrying about where they're going to sleep tonight and hating their situation and not knowing how to get out of it, they're waking up in the same bed and they can take a shower and there's somebody who listens to them. Their drug or alcohol use is they're going to change those behaviors because they see a different future.
Right.
Whereas if you just wake up cold and wet outside with a headache, you don't know where you're going to eat or sleep, the options of like choosing a substance so your brain's in a different space, even if you're physically not, no, that's appealing. Whereas if you're waking up with a headache in the same bed every day, you might think,
make a change.
Yeah, I can make a change now. And you see that possibility. I had somebody once I talked to, and I interviewed him for a video, and he said, I used to sit there on the sidewalk in downtown Santa Fe, I'll see all the cars going by, people going to work, and thinking, I wish I was inside that car going to work, but I have no idea how to get from here to there. And that's sort of where someone like us comes in. So Homeward Bound of Marin or COTS in Petaluma, there's a bunch of good programs around, is that we're that bridge. And we can't do it for everybody. People have to make their own choices. But we provide like a structure for people to be in, shelter, and some supportive housing that allow people to change their behaviors. Now, there are some who don't take advantage of it, but there are many who do.
Right.
And so it just really, like, given a chance, most people do want housing, and they do want to live what we would consider a more normal life, with structure. They just lost their way somewhere, in their life journey, and we can help them, give them a hand up. I think you asked, what did I say? The last thing I would say is that every time somebody says no to affordable housing, they're saying yes to homelessness. They're saying, yes, we're okay for people to be outside. Because if you don't say yes to affordable housing, there's nowhere for a lot of those people to go. And so I understand the fear, but I would like to, offer our program and many others around the North Bay as real solutions to the issue of homelessness. So we need to keep saying yes to affordable housing when it comes up at city council meetings, and taking the time to go to those meetings and say, we do need to find a solution. Homelessness is getting out of control, and we need good programs that are well run, that have affordable solutions, and affordable housing is part of that. And that we need to get behind this. So taking the time to, 7:00 at night calling to your local city council meeting and say that I support this, it can seem really inconvenient in our days, but it makes a huge difference to getting projects like these approved and then finding real solutions.
Right. Oh, that's great. I mean, thank you for everything that you do and that Homeward Bound does. It sounds like an incredible program. Didn't really know anything about it. Kind of blown away with everything that you guys do. If someone wants to get in touch with you directly, what's the best way to get in touch with you, Paul?
Yeah, you can reach out to us via our website, and there's I think my number's on there, but if not, you can reach the general line and they can direct them to me. Okay. And so the website is HBO, like the TV station, and then FM, like the radio. So hbofm.org.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. And then the dog treats, do you sell them directly or just in stores? If someone wants to get one of those dog treats, Oliver's Market, you said Molly's, where else?
Pet Food Express and Whole Foods. Pet Food area. And then most independent pet food stores carry them.
And what's the name of the brand specifically?
Wagster. Wagster Treats.
Wagster Treats.
And you can absolutely buy them online. WagsterTreats.com.
Okay.
We make more money if you do. So
right.
Go online, buy them online.
So go buy them directly. Yeah. What was the website again?
WagsterTreats.com.
WagsterTreats.com.
We'll get some for the office.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we will do that. Yeah. Well, again, Paul, thank you very much. It's been really informative, and hopefully we can have you back maybe in a while, and you can tell us about how this new project's come together that way. But thank you very much for joining us today.
Love to.
So
thank
again,
you, Paul.
Yeah.
I'm Sean Payne, founder and owner of LivXplore Real Estate and Lifestyle, and thank you very much for joining us today.
See you guys next time.
Welcome to the LivXplore Podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe.